Good morning. Welcome into Five Clubs. Great to have you with us on this Tuesday morning here on Golf Channel, also PGA Tour Radio. That's Channel 92 on Sirius XM. I'm Gary Williams, and this program, as you know, it's brought to you by Century Insurance. If you have business insurance needs, let them meet them. They will. They are right by you. Golf Pride, when it comes to grip options with the best materials, that's why they have the best products. That's why more players go around your club, go into the bag room. Actually, don't do that. Just trust me. They have the best products. They are trusted by the most players. And of course, Peter Millar, if you would like this Autumn Crest Honeycomb crew neck sweater in 6 colors, I can't wear all 6 at once. You can get them all at petermillar.com. That's why they are the premier lifestyle brand that you could possibly have available to you. It's not just golf, it is your lifestyle at Peter Millar. All right, Teachers Week continues. Yesterday, very pleased to be joined by Erica Larkin, also Jason Bale. Today, Mark Blackburn and Michael Breed. And if you consider that Michael Breed, who is somebody I've known longer than almost anybody in this industry, has been doing it as long as he has, and he's got all these media outlets, and he's got a radio program that follows ours on the radio side, obviously for many years, the TV show here on Golf Channel. And then, of course, Mark Blackburn. Mark had a guy who is in his client list. I was going to say stable. That seems kind of weird. Win on Sunday, Matt Fitzpatrick, Max Homa, Justin Rose. And it's, to me, the most interesting aspect of Mark's journey is his own beginnings in instruction. And it speaks to something he wrote in a book that he just published that is going to be part of our conversation, The Coaching Code. I've read the whole thing. It is so good. And I said this yesterday, I'm not a big instructional book guy. This is like a life guide more than it is about, swing positions. I can promise you that. So he's going to be joining me here in less than 10 minutes. Yesterday, though, I will say that I didn't have enough time to give credit to Adam Schenk, and not that he's looking for credit from me, but when someone like Adam Schenk wins a golf tournament, he deserves a ton of attention and conversation. No, it is not what the signature series are or kind of have morphed into when it comes to that part of the PGA Tour schedule. I've said this about really Sunday late afternoon in events like that where all the stars are aligned and you know who the main players are, because it's like, okay, yeah, he's in the playbill. I know that I've got Scheffler. I know that I've got Rory. I know that I've got Xander. And so this show's going to be good. Whereas when you watch events like the Butterfield Bermuda Championship, you can go, he's kind of been performing off Broadway, but I like him. He's good. He had one opportunity. He kind of had a minor role at the Valspar a couple years ago. Remember, he was paired with Jordan Spieth, and he outplayed him. Kind of like, well, he had a bigger role, but he actually was better in his role. That happened. And then Adam Schenk, who I thought was on the cusp of winning, but again, you never know because it's all so damn tenuous to begin with, had a period which put him in the position he was in going into this week. And here to me is the most impressive thing about him winning. He didn't win off a great result. He didn't win with great momentum. He won as somebody who came into the week outside the top 130 in the FedEx Cup standings. You know what that means? That means not even conditional status on the PGA Tour potentially in 2026. That is what I'm talking about when I say perilous and tenuous position. So he comes in as somebody who, from the beginning of March until the beginning of June, he made one cut. And it wasn't like after that, he was building this steamroller of momentum. He wasn't. So he came in with probably, who knows, doubt is an unusual thing, but he didn't have a ton of belief. And then let's add, it's kind of like the scene in The Truman Show when Ed Harris's character says, cue the wind. Let's give him the wind now. Let's break him. Like they tried to break Truman. They didn't break him. So You know, the idea of what this game can expose, and it does expose a lot. And at the end, if you win, exposes that you're awfully good. But it does expose frailties. And at a time where they're probably, not that you're paying attention to his results week to week, Adam Schenk had probably displayed as much frailty or maybe doubt or the idea that I don't know. I don't know that I can do this at 33 years of age. And he broke through that vortex. And as the guy who's going to join me in a couple of minutes said in his own book, we respond to pain. True. But how do you respond to that pain? And that the idea that, you know, as Hal Holbrook said in the real Wall Street, not Shia LaBeouf Wall Street, people, when he said, man stares into the abyss and nothing's staring back at him. And at that moment, man finds his character. And that's what keeps man out of the abyss. I don't know if Adam Schenk was staring into the abyss, but in golf terms, being outside the top 130 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, that's as close as I can imagine. And with the wind cued by Ed Harris, 40 miles an hour, he plowed through and he won a golf tournament. So that to me, while yes, the truest championship and the heritage and this obviously the players, but you know what I'm talking about. Those events are they're like watching episodes of The Bachelorette. Things are going to work out for the people on those shows. They're not ugly. But when you watch a Ken Burns documentary, you got to lean forward and say, no, this is really the essence of it all. And I'm not saying the Butterfield Bermuda Championship was a Ken Burns doc, but if you've already bought the Ed Harris relationship and if you've already been pulled in by the Hal Holbrook reference, you're all in on Ken Burns. That's why this time of the year, not only does it matters that it explains why this is all so interesting to begin with. Because someone like Matt Fitzpatrick, who didn't get off to the best start this year, and again, it's not the same thing, but for him, he measures himself based on certain things. And being on that European Ryder Cup team is one of those measurements. That's why this game will always be interesting to me, whether it's the middle of November or whether it is the middle of May and we are heading to Aronimink for the PGA Championship off of the Truist Championship down the road at Quail Hollow. All right, we take a break. When we continue, he was either nodding, going, yeah, I get that, or he's going, my gosh, he doesn't get it at all. Mark Blackburn's going to join me, his new book, The Coaching Code. Again, I don't recommend it because he's coming on. I recommend it because it's really good, and it's not about just, how to get better as a golfer. It's about how to teach, but how to accept coaching and the things that matter most. We'll talk to him about the book, about some of the people he works with, and his own journey in this game. It is Teachers Week a little bit later on. Michael Breed as well. And before the end of the show, I will explain to you how a text before the show was an example of me always knowing where I stand in the grand scheme of things. That at the end of the program. Mark Blackburn next. It is 5 Club's Golf Channel here and also on PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92 on Sirius XM. We're back right after this. Welcome back in on this Tuesday to 5 Clubs. Yes, it is Teachers Week. Instructors, coaches, they do all of that. And it's great to have you with us because we're talking throughout this week to the people who work with the best players in the world, but also work with people who just want to find joy in the game as well. This segment brought to you by Century Insurance. Business insurance needs are met with Century. And you saw those images of Mark Blackburn. He was acknowledged as the Teacher of the Year by Golf Digest. He obviously is on all the lists, Golf Digest and Golf Magazine, you name it. He has a client list among the best players in the world. He was a player at one time, which I think gives him a view of this game, which is, I think, helpful. He joins me now from Sea Island. I always enjoy conversations with him. And off of the penning of this new book, The Coaching Code, which, again, I highly recommend, because this is not just about, hey, what do I look like on the downswing? This is about tenets and maxims and kind of direction for life. How you feeling, my friend? Good morning.
Morning, Gary. Yeah, I'm great here at beautiful Sea Island. We've got some amazing weather this week, which is unusual. Typically, it's hand warmers and a Parker jacket and a toque hat, but this week it's very nice out there.
It is. I'm coming down early this week. I looked at the forecast that said that can't be St. Simon's Island. It can't be November. I mean, like you said, it's a two-beanie day usually. I want to start. I mentioned you as a player, and there's a lot of stuff that I want to try to get to that is in this book that you just wrote. Do you think that you would have been as inclined to pursue what you do now if you didn't experience the own pain that you did? I mean, physically, but also intellectually and emotionally as somebody who was pursuing the game as a player, and then you felt some real desperation, like, where am I going to sleep? Where's the check coming from? Did pain help you on your own path?
Yeah, I think being a former player and a golfer, you realize how hard the game is. So you have a lot of empathy for the players that you coach. And I think the other part too is, you're committed to trying to understand something. Why did I struggle? And then can I then take that learning and help other people not go through the same thing? And that's really my journey. And I think it's one of those things where there's a driver to all of us, right? Like, what is your driver? Well, I didn't really have a plan B. I didn't have any alternatives. It was, I'm going to make this golf thing work. And I love the game. And it was coaching and teaching was a way for me to stay in the game, still be competitive, but take the learning I'd had. People call them failures, but I'd say, look, it's just a learning. When you're not successful, what can I learn from it? How can I move forwards? And I think that's really what a playing background is really helpful for. I think it allows you to understand, the complexities of the game. And when things are going well, it's easy. But when things are struggling, you can put yourself in the player's, frame of mind. I've been there, I've struggled. And I think that's a huge, feather in your cap as a coach.
Early in this book, I learned something. I'm always curious about people's foundation, where it started, advocates that you had in your life. You discovered something that was created in the 1950s that was supposed to be applied in public school systems to kind of, I don't know if this is the right term, cross-pollinate curriculum in a way that would help learning be more achievable. Explain that and why you saw that and said, hold on a second, this applies to what I'm doing.
Yeah, so Bloom's taxonomy was created in the education field to basically categorize learning in the way that you would essentially transfer information. And I felt like from a golf perspective, that had a lot of, applicable sort of, if you like, messaging. And I was like, how can I take what I do as a teacher and a coach and then put a step-by-step process? So I could take someone who's a complete beginner, or I could take a tour player, and then I could still give them the same sort of transfer of information. It's scaled relative to their skill, but to do something that was applicable over a lot of different students. And then it's basically a critical thinking, strategy, and critical thinking is essentially what coaching is. And so to me, it was just logical. I'm pretty pragmatic. Does this work? Is this easy? Is it scalable? I have other instructors at the academy at Greystone. I'm trying to make them great coaches as well. So it's like, what's the blueprint, the framework that will work for them to be successful with their students, regardless of style, just more about the actual overall framework of how you help people develop from a beginner and take them all the way to playing and being competitive relative to their skill.
You mentioned, Mark, information. There's a great line you wrote, data is persistent, but there's a humility to embracing data. And that humility comes with something that you then expounded upon about how we all have our own perceptions, we all have our own intuitions, our own instincts. And if those are challenged, that can be ego deflating, and it can affect confidence. How do you, as an instructor, use the data that is persistent to break through those perceptions and intuitions, to not break them, but to build them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, look, great coaching is about framing, right? How do you frame the information? The facts are the facts. Just like if you were to go to the doctor and they'll do a CBC and they may do some other type of testing, and the results are the results. So you've got to find a way to have intervention, to be creative and look at this as an opportunity. Okay, here's what we know. What can we do to improve your technique to make you better? Here's what the stats are telling us. What's a strategy that we can apply to help you develop and improve that? Because if we sort of change this area of your game, the contribution to your overall scoring could be great. And that's where analytics is so helpful now, because strokes gained is a very objective view of where a player is. It's not their interpretation, their subjective, well, this is what I feel like I'm doing. We have objective data points, and you can't hide from that. So then it becomes, how do I create the right narrative about developing that player's, if it's a deficit, and what are the implications? Sometimes you try and change something and it can have a knock-on effect in other ends of the game. So it's always important to try and maintain a strength whilst chipping away at maybe some deficiencies to help the player play better.
There is a section in the book that, again, I whatever it is that you do, and this is why this book has applications way beyond the game of golf, and it's about learning in losing and how failures can help build you. And you reference Angela Duckworth, and people who have watched this show, listen to me for years. Grit is among one of my favorite books. She has worked with a lot of teams, a lot of athletes. It's about growth and the growth mindset. Accepting failure, accepting deficiencies, that's another area. Look, I can go through your client list, and it's all relative, but whether it's Justin Rose or Matt Fitzpatrick or Max Homa, they all have experienced these varying degrees of those things. Why do you think you have the empathy that you have? Is it because of your own path? Because without the empathy, Mark, there's no way you're going to connect with these people.
Yeah, look, I inherently wouldn't say I'm the most talented person. I'd say that my work ethic is borderline psychotic. And so I'm always trying to essentially, like, if there's a problem, like if you tell me I can't, I'm from the generation where that's a big motivator. So pretty old school. So I'm always trying to figure strategies to help people. So there's no such word as can't to me. Can't means won't. So my job is to get people to be able to do things that they didn't think they were able to raise their capacity, their ceiling to perform really well. And I think understanding that how hard golf is, because I struggled with it, I think it's one of those things where I have a big sort of empathy for the difficult parts, but I'm committed to being able to help somebody through the journey. And as a coach, my job is to push them and to nudge them. Sometimes they don't like that, but my job is to make them feel uncomfortable, because that's necessary for growth. And I think it's just understanding how hard the game actually is and really knowing what are all the intricacies that you need to develop to become a great player. And at the end of the day, I always tell my guys this, and girls, that becoming a great player isn't necessarily, it doesn't need to look pretty. It needs to be efficient. And it's the person who writes the lowest number down. That's coaching. And I think it's really important to get the best out of your players and to push them. And the best work is done in the most uncomfortable situations, like frustration, anger. All those things are essential parts of learning. If you just look at learning, you need to have that and embrace it. And I think that's the part that I really try and bestow onto the players, is how significant that is. People say it's a cliche, but it's not the destination, it's the journey. And the gold is in the journey, is trying to understand that what can I learn from these errors and mistakes? That's what makes you better. And hopefully we avoid making the same mistake twice.
You also, there's a great line. You said the best players don't just accept reality, they seek it out, which I think again, is true of all athletes. Last thing, my dad used to say to me, a goal is not a goal unless it's attainable. You have a great example in there about Ches Reavie, who, again, there are a lot of players who make their way. They're kind of wallpaper. Look, I know about his journey. I didn't know the details of what he shared with you about what he wanted to reclaim after losing certain aspects of his status. But how do you manage expectations with players who you know should have the highest of anybody? How do you manage it all?
Yeah, well, look, good golf seems very simple at the time. And then when somebody's struggling, good golf seems so far away and it's really difficult. And I think it's always about creating a process. This is what we're trying to do. And if we do this, the outcomes will prevail, right? I think sometimes it's quite easy to say, I'm going to win a tournament, I'm going to do this. I think it's a lot easier to create these goals along the way that will guarantee almost, there's no guarantees, but pretty much this will be the desired outcome if we do this. And I think it's always about, I use the Star Wars analogy, right? Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. I say to my players, this is a partnership, not a dictatorship. I'm going to push you, but I'm the guide. You are the star of the movie, right? And it's about taking them on this journey, showing them the different things that they need to do to essentially get the force and become the player that they want to become. And I think if you're always a step ahead of them and you're trying to be very proactive about where you're going, that's what players, I think, are looking for. They're looking for somebody to be the calm in the chaos. I talk about that in the book, but be basically the driver of what they're doing, allow them the freedom to be themselves, but you're trying to cultivate and nurture them to be able to accomplish what they want. And everybody, even the best players, they still are anxious. They still want to do things. My job is to be the calm for them, to say, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to do it. And if you look at great coaches across all sports, that's what it is. I want to be confidence for the player. I want them to know, hey, Mark's got my back. I'm not too sure about that, but I know if I talk to Mark, that's going to help me. And I think that's what you're looking for, whether it's Alex Ferguson, Jurgen Klopp in soccer, whether it's Nick Saban in football, or Bill Parcells, whatever it may be. You look at any sport, great coaches are great coaches because you're trying to get things out of people that they don't think they can do, and you're giving them the confidence to be able to go forwards and excel.
This last thing I had was about the calm and the chaos. I know that the reason why, Mark, that I wanted to do this is that I started looking at athletes at a young age and found performance to be maybe the most enthralling thing in this life to watch. Because I had the dexterity as a little kid to do most things, and then it's like I can't do that like they do it. And then it's like, how do they do that? So I became totally immersed in watching performance. When you watch your guys, and you talked about, things that you know about people, whether it's, getting nervous or an upset stomach, and there are certain things you can visually see. Do you know when you see your guys and they're in flow? Can you see it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, you can see it when you watch them playing golf because they do incredible things. Yes. That's probably the one thing that I'm most envious of, is just their ability to perform in the most difficult conditions, and sometimes it brings even the best out in them. If you look at Rosie and you look at Fitzy at the Ryder Cup, I know they're anxious, right? They're playing for their country, their continent. And it's the same when players play. I know when Max played in Rome, but their ability to perform under pressure is incredible. It is a gift. They don't have stage fright. They sort of rise to the occasion. I'm a confident person. I can go speak in front of thousands of people, no problem. But you put me on a golf course, I'm going to get anxious and nervous, playing competitively. You work through it. But what's incredible about the players is when you see them, sometimes, the last round before certain warm-ups, all of a sudden you'll come on and they're just in a different space. It's incredible, right? And I think that is a gift that the elite performers in every sport have. It's like a switch. They just have this gift, which is incredible. And when they're in flow, the stuff that they do, the way they think, how fast they process is truly incredible. And it's amazing to see. And that's why we love watching golf on TV. When we look at these major championships, what's incredible, if you really stand back and think about it, is their ability to do it when they have to, especially in the majors, the 4 times a year, throw in the players. it's incredible. So they know that they got to do it, and they're able to do it, which is, the more we learn about the brain and neuroscience, the more I'm fascinated, because I think that's where instruction is going, our ability to understand this thing to be able to get the most out of our players.
Well, you mentioned Bill Parcells, and when you referenced him at the beginning of the book, I'm like, really? He's got me. As a Giant fan all my life and bringing me the first Super Bowl. Again, this book is outstanding, and I now have to make room for this on the nightstand. Ryan Holiday has now got, because this is the kind of thing, you pick it up, you read 5 pages, like, all right, I'm good. I'm nourished for the night. That's what this book is. Congratulations on that. I always appreciate it. I hope you know that when you carve out time. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, everyone. Happy holidays to everybody. You can get that book on my website, blackburngolf.com. You can also get it on Amazon. So good stocking stuffer for those folks who need a bit of motivation.
Very good. Mark Blackburn right there from Sea Island. And again, voted the Teacher of the Year by Golf Digest. Those were winning words presented by Century Insurance. That conversation, the value of hearing his thoughts about not only his own journey, but the application of the things that he thinks are important. And again, the mind doesn't operate. The body is not going to cooperate. All right, we continue here. Michael Breed. Speaking of a mind, yes, his program follows at the top of the hour on the radio side on Sirius XM. There's only one other person in the industry that I've known longer than Michael Breed. I don't know that I need to reveal that name, but he will join me next about his own path as an instructor. He was voted Teacher of the Year by the PGA of America in 2012. He is next right here. 5 Clubs Golf Channel, PGA Tour Radio, Channel 92, Sirius XM. Back with Michael Breed right after this. Welcome back in on this Tuesday, Teachers Week. Appreciate all these people who, doesn't matter what time of the year, because of technology, they can communicate with all of their students. They're busy 12 months out of the year. Looking forward to being joined by a couple more tomorrow as well. And as you'll notice, there'll be a pattern. Every single day there'll be one of them from Sea Island, because that's where the last event of the year on the PGA Tour schedule is, at the RSM. And so many of these great instructors, teachers, coaches work with all of these players. And of course, this segment is brought to you by Peter Millar when it comes to having options about not just what you wear at your club, at anything you do, wherever you go, they've got you covered. It's Peter Millar at petermillar.com. And you saw the images of the guy who's going to be joining me. As soon as you let me know that we've got any issues that we have with him resolved, I'll bring him aboard, and that is Michael Breed. And Michael reminds me of some things early on in my own career, because I started my path in the golf industry as a club professional. And giving lessons, I don't want to say that it was easy. It wasn't, because, and I did some teaching. And I'll never forget the best piece of advice that I got, because one of the things that I learned from this person who was observing me, and it's a guy who had won the U.S. Amateur, was Vinnie Giles, who was downrange from where I was giving a lesson. When the lesson was over and my student walked away, he came over to me and said, "Gary, you talk too much." It's the greatest lesson I ever got. Speaking of talking, he could win. It can close you out. If you let him do this all day, you'll relent, you'll succumb, he'll beat you 3-2 at the end of the day in terms of total words delivered. He is, of course, Michael Breed, host of A New Breed of Golf, course record on CBS. He has written books, he has done videos, he hosted the Golf Fix. He's multimedia. My dear old friend, good morning.
Good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great. You know,
good.
I was saying, look, there's only one other person who I've known longer than you in this industry, and that's John McGinnis, and that was just because of geography, being in North Carolina. I know that you were a very good athlete growing up on the rough and tumble, mean, leafy streets of Greenwich, Connecticut. But what I also know, Michael, is that you want your students to be athletes. Your sons are good at a lot of things, and I know that you're letting them make their own choices. Why is it important for golfers to be athletes?
Well, they got to believe in their capabilities. And I heard Mark Blackburn in his interview and what he was talking about with your job as a coach. And one of the things that your job as a coach is to give your players the belief that they can achieve it. And everybody's got athletic skill. And when you start finding out the athletic skill that they possess, whether it's an understanding of like Nabilo, how to move a tennis racket, or somebody else with a hockey stick, or somebody else with a baseball or a baseball bat, and then you can start to go back to when they had success. Most people have played, particularly that we get the chance to work with, most people have played a sport of that type in high school. And they probably had success, particularly if they went on and played in college. And so being able to find the success paths that they've enjoyed and then be able to use common feels from those sports into the game, that allows them to start to understand that they can believe it. And I think one of the things that I've been very fortunate in doing is convincing people that they can achieve what they want, what they hope to achieve, what they want to achieve, and finding the way to do that for them.
Well, Michael, I think that's one of the great gifts that people like yourself who do break through with a lot of different level players is getting them to believe that they can be something that they didn't see themselves. That to me, in an intimidating environment, which is what golf can be, and the exercise itself, which is why I value what you do so much. You and I have only played a couple rounds of golf, which is criminal. But the thing that I noticed about you is that you're very twitchy, and I don't mean that in like a nervous way. You don't let yourself get static. And I think that's a reflection back to athleticism. And I think that golf, for whatever reason, people find themselves in these like static states. What are the things that you try to impart upon people about fluidity and being in motion, even though it might appear you're not?
Well, one thing I would say is this, and you've known me a long time. If I'm sitting still, something bad's going to happen.
No doubt.
I've got to be moving. and I do look at other sports, and I've studied a lot of things, as I'm sure you have as well. The movement of the eyes and the importance of the eyes and decision-making skills and all these little different things that go on it. But there has to be movement, foot movement, hand movement. You look at the very best players, go back to Snead or whatever, there's a waggle that's going on. It helps to relieve some of the tension, but also, too, it excites the mind. And when you get the mind thinking about what it wants to do instead of what it doesn't want to do, when it doesn't want to do something, it doesn't want to hit it to the right or it doesn't want to hit it to the left, that's when all of a sudden you get frozen and you lose the movement. And I think one of the things that happens to us, and this is the analogy that I give my students, if we have a narrow or near miss in a car accident, what will happen is we'll immediately go to 10 and 2 with our hands and grip the wheel a little bit tighter. We'll immediately slow down and get in the slow lane and possibly even pull off the road. But in effect, what happens is it prevents progress. It prevents movement. And so what I want movement so that I don't have the car accident. And what I believe is that when you get people reacting to things and they're starting to let their eyes wander, and imagine being a baseball player, watching what's going on with the pitch, watching where the players are, watching the movements, trying to think about why they're going to throw a curveball or a fastball, understanding where you want to place the ball, where's the open spot in the field. All these little different things are going on while there appears to be nothing going on. In the two-dimensional space, it feels like nothing is happening, but in the 3D space, it's moving at warp speed. And I think that's a good thing for the game of golf. And that's why I want to see players moving. I want to see feet moving and waggles and hands and eyes and all these different. I don't want somebody to sit there like a statue. I just don't find that it creates success.
You talk, one of the things that you use as a foundational piece is cause and effect, or effect and cause. And with the kind of data and the visuals you can present now, Michael, to students, they can go, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying there. What are the tools you try to give people when they're playing golf? Those things that you've identified while you're instructing them, and you can show cause and effect or effect and cause, and to be able to apply it and self-correct when they're playing golf. What are the things that you do to make that attainable?
Well, one of the things, and you know this well because you've been in the space, one of the things that the game of golf has always done to people is it's seemingly difficult. And so our job as a coach, whether you're working with tour players or you're working with beginners or anybody in between, is to try to make the complicated simple. Is one of the things that Einstein was so good at. They would ask Einstein, like, how did you know when you were ready to come public with stuff that you've discovered? And he said, well, I have an 8-year-old neighbor. This was when he was living in Princeton. I have an 8-year-old neighbor, and when I can explain it to her and she can understand it, then I'm ready to come to the public with it. And I think one of the things that is paramount as a coach, paramount as a teacher, is to make the complicated simple. And so if you can make it simple, hey, if I have the face of the golf club on a 25-degree angle to the right and I drop a ball to that, where's the ball likely to bounce? They're going to go, well, to the right. And once you can make it that simple, I call it Fred Flintstone golf. Once you can do that, then people feel like they can reason their way out of the complicated, and it becomes a little bit more understandable and a little bit easier to perform. And so as a coach, I kind of feel like my job is to make the complicated simple, to know about all the things that are going on, but then to kind of wean it down into, hey, if the ball's going to the right, the club faces to the right. If the ball's going to the left, the club faces to the left. And how are we going to solve that? What are the things that each individual needs to do to get control of the face so that they can hit the shot that they want to hit?
Michael, you grew up the way that I did in terms of the way that we were given instruction, and I believe you started your career in a very similar way. And you've seen all this evolution, and you've applied all this evolution. You've evolved as an instructor, as a coach, as a teacher. Do you think that there are 2 or 3 data points that overwhelmingly apply to most players, or is it still a very individual thing in terms of identifying the technology and the data as it relates to each student?
I think one of the things that's probably changed the most I'm 63. So in my career of teaching and my career of playing has been the understanding of the body's ability to allow the club to do what you want the club to do. And I think that's one of the things that Mark, and I love that book. He sent me that book as well, and I'm in the middle of reading it too. What he's so good at, and Dave Phillips and Greg Rose and everybody at TPI have been fabulous at doing, is pointing out that, you know what, if you don't have internal or external hip rotation or shoulder rotation, there's going to be limitations to what you can do. And so I, as a coach, am I really achieving what I want to achieve with my player if their body can't perform what I'm asking them to perform? And so I think that's probably been one of the most enlightening things in the business, along with club fitting. And I do think club fitting is a very important part of the growth of the game and why players now can create the speeds that they can create. Because what we understand is that if I put the right club in their hands, they can swing it faster. And if I get their body in the right condition, they can swing it faster. And I think that one of the biggest things is speed is a separator in all sports. And so when you start looking at an ability to throw a baseball 100 miles an hour or an ability to swing a golf club at 125 miles an hour, those are separators. And I think that's probably been the greatest difference between when I was playing the game at 20, 22, 24 and teaching this game at 62, 63.
You love the Harmon family. And so do I, and I think collectively you go, who had the best eyes? They all did. And you have always had a good eye. Do you find yourself still wanting to reinforce that your eye is not lying? Like the football uses the term, the eye in the sky doesn't lie. Do you want for your own skill set to know that your eye is telling you the truth and not lean on the data yourself as an instructor?
It's an interesting thing. I do think that the eye is important, and I think that the data is vital as well. And I think when you start talking about data, you're also talking about statistics and the degree of consistency with which somebody can perform a certain shot, whatever it is, a draw or a fade. And so I think there's a lot of things that go in this. I think what separates the Harmons from, frankly, anybody else is, and this is something that Mark touches on in his book, knowing what to say, when to say it. I think that's something that's an art. And I think Butch has an uncanny way of knowing exactly what to say to his players to get them to perform at the highest level. Part of the art, too, in knowing what to say is knowing what not to say and when not to say something or when to say something. And I think one of the most important things that I've learned in my life is not necessarily that the stats are going to tell a player something or what I'm going to tell somebody, about what they're doing with their club, and I'm seeing this with this and blah, blah, blah. I don't necessarily think that that's the most important part of this. I think the most important part for me in getting my players to perform is getting them to understand that they have a say in the direction that we're going, that we're rowing the boat. That, the analogy I give is, hey, there's two of us in the boat. I'm rowing and you're rowing. And if we row in the same direction, we're going to go somewhere. And if you're not rowing or I'm not rowing or we're rowing in opposite directions, we're going to go in a circle. And I think the art of this game of coaching is the preparation of what you're going to say to somebody to get them to A, believe they can do it, and then B, do it. And it's not always found in, hey, this is what I saw, or this is what the data says, but really it is in the, hey, you're capable of doing this, and or to Mark's point, challenging somebody to get them to do something the Parcells way, right? And so I think that in coaching, I think you've got all these different sort of X-ray machines, right? Whether it's your eyes or whether it's the data or whether it's the statistics, whatever it is. But ultimately, the thing that gets somebody to perform is knowing what to say to them away from that to get to their emotional set, which allows them to believe that they can hit the shot that they want to hit when they need to hit it. And I think that's the most important part of coaching.
Michael, all of this, I loved it all. And obviously your show comes up top of the hour on the radio side from 9 to noon Eastern. Thank you for carving out the time out of your busy schedule. How many hockey games tonight?
We're in practices. We get to go to Lake Placid this weekend. So we've got 12 this weekend. So it's going to be fun.
Oh, how great is that? Thank you, my friend.
Always.
Okay, Michael Breed, New Breed of Golf on the radio side. He's got his TV show on CBS Sports. He's got several books, including a great book on putting as well. We take our final break, come back, and I'll give you a reminder of why we all should know that whatever our station in life is, it's not as elevated as we ourselves think it is. Back right after this. Back in, final couple of minutes here on this Tuesday edition of Five Clubs. This segment brought to you by Golf Pride. The reverse taper putter grip. I'm not trying to hold on to this grip just to continue to prove the point. I promise you I'd replace it if it needed replacing. I've had it on my putter for more than 2 years. And in those 2 years, let's just say I played a few rounds of golf. And the putter grip is in pristine condition. It's really amazing, not to mention the way it's engineered. It's the best grip that I've had. As my buddies know, I've never made more putts. They love that moniker. Appreciate Golf Pride. I want to just read one more thing from Mark Blackburn's book, because I've underlined a bunch of stuff, and this book will go on my nightstand because it's the kind of book that you're going to pick up again and again and again and just say, I want to read this chapter again. And he's talking about players. But he says that they, meaning the players, understand inherently that comfort is the enemy of growth. Think about that. I mean, just think about that and whatever it is that you're doing. Comfort is the enemy of growth. I can promise you if I'm comfortable, I'm probably not growing as a person because it means I'm watching the 4th episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, season 6, when Leon really elevates himself. That's really not personal growth, even though I feel good about what I'm doing. I'm not growing. Comfort is the enemy of growth. This book is really terrific. Tomorrow, Justin Parsons, also from Sea Island, that is home for him. He's got so many wonderful players that he works with. Looking forward to a conversation with him. And then, of course, Chris Como. For a lot of people, Chris Como burst into the public consciousness when he started working with Tiger. And they're like, who's this guy? Biomechanics, and what's his story? Well, he's got a heck of a story himself. I sat on a cooler on the range at the PGA last May, and he was telling me about the beginning, and I wasn't even aware of it, but currently in terms of who he works with, and obviously his impact on Bryson DeChambeau, and of course his work with Xander Schauffele. And I was looking yesterday, looking back on some tee shots that Xander Schauffele hit in the final round of the Open Championship in 2024, when he had already won a major, and here he is at Royal Troon coming down the stretch, and on 13 and on 15, 183 ball speed, 185 ball speed, launch at 107, launch at 119. That stuff is not accidental. But doing that stuff on a range in Dallas or in a lab with Chris Como is one thing. Transferring it to the final round of an Open Championship when it's under the gun and it's easy speed at 185, that's why I love doing what I'm doing. And just a reminder, we all should know our lot in life. When Christopher Mad Dog Russo texts me before the show at 7:58, hey, can you get me on a couple places in Scottsdale? Hey, man, I'm not just like a low manager at Golf Now. I'll get you the tee times. See you tomorrow, everybody.